Today on Let 'Em Cook, there's been an ongoing war between the old and the new in the FGC. We're about to see what's better.
And we're going to dive into the State of Tekken. We look into Katsuhiro Harada's brand new interview. Are we taking him to the Waffle House, or are we going to have a team-based Tekken anytime soon?
And how do we deal with complaints in the FGC? How do we sit through the real criticism versus the people just crying on the internet?
Hold on. I don't know what I can't see what time it is. Oh, yeah. It's time to cook. All right. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. I'm thinking about the good times. All right. Hey, welcome to Let 'Em Cook. My name is Zaid Tabani.
I'm saying Cola.
I'm Lumi.
Yo, we've been off for a little bit. The last episode we posted was actually kind of cataloged from a while back because Cola's been traveling a lot, and I have totally been fasting for Ramadan. I've totally been good about fasting for Ramadan, and it's Eid this week, so I'm gonna totally reap my hard-earned rewards. Cola, how have you been? Because I've been fasting the whole time. There's been no end to the amount I've been fasting.
I don't want to hurt your stomach too much, but I've not been fasting. I've been eating a little bit too much, so I have to hold back a little bit. I've been traveling. Eating,
well, you're a bad Muslim then. I just want to let you know. You're a terrible Muslim because I, a great Muslim, have been fasting.
Don't
what
show
about
your
you,
mom
Lumi?
this.
You're Puerto Rican. Have you been a good Puerto Rican and not been fasting?
Listen, last night I had some pork chops and some rice. I'm the best Puerto Rican for all I know at the moment. So
as you can see, this is fasting juice. It's not pre-workout in any way, shape, or form.
Of course.
I'm in my lane. I'm flourishing. I'm chilling.
Anyway, guys, it's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks in the fighting game community. We wanted to talk about a lot of things because there's been so much intense discussion about a lot of things that some people would describe as really important for the scene. Some people would describe as stupid drama. But, you know, there is actually a little bit of controversy between which is which. So let's talk about it a little bit really quickly. Let's start with the old games versus new games debate. This has been going on, continued since this Chris T podcast with Ryan Hart dropped. And there's been this whole contentious debate. It's been a debate for a while, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and it's the essential idea of the debate is that older games offered more player expression and were much more difficult with their system mechanics. And newer games have had an easier time at accessibility. And therefore, when you succeed at newer games, there's less of a skill gap between the top players and players coming up, right? And is that lack of a skill gap helping players become top players more? Is it actually easing the like? Is it ruining, or not necessarily ruining, but like, is it less skill based? Do we have less of a skill base in these games of these top players? But these top players that we're seeing today, who are coming up through the ranks, survive in the days of 3S, NST, and dealing with Vi talking shit at like midnight, when they need to get home. Would that be the same case? Did I describe it accurately? What do you think, Cola? Lumi, like, open up to the floor. How do you guys feel about this whole debate that's been going on since the Christie podcast? Where do you guys stand on it?
I want to just say that I do agree that games are, as a totality, easier, but that's not always like a good thing or a bad thing. That just depends on the kind of player that you are. However, that may be the case. It doesn't make the competition easier. There's a lot more players out here these days. There's a lot more information being shared. There's a lot more. You don't have to get VHSs or watch a crusty ass YouTube. Bro, I remember trying to learn Third Strike, and I can't see half the shit on the goddamn screen because it's so damn blurry. Like, I don't have to do that anymore. I can immediately get the information and get into the game. And with all those things being factored, I think competition is just as difficult as it would be previously, but it's a different sort of difficulty, right? Like, maybe you're not gatekept with, the hardest links in the business or super hard execution, but you are gatekept by somebody who has really good knowledge of the game immediately or understands the game at a fundamental level way faster than you, or can get that practice a little bit quicker. And I still think that no matter what, like, even if the execution of these games has gotten easier and access to certain things like aggression, all that stuff has gotten easier, and they're still really hard to play. Fighting games will always be hard to play no matter what. Like, for the most part.
Do do you think Ryan is on the right track with what he said? Because it was Ryan who was kind of driving the debate a little bit. Chris, like, full disclosure, you know, I'm friends with Chris T, and I think Cole, you're friends with Chris T. Like, Chris is is a dude who's been through a lot and worked really, really hard to get where he is, and I'm really glad his podcast is popping off. But Chris does have a habit of like stirring the pot a little bit in this direction, and something that he's been pretty passionate about through multiple games, right? You know, he comes from that, old school like mentality. Like, do you feel that they're wrong then, or do you feel like they are? Is it more of a nuance to like do you think that they're looking in the wrong place when you say that?
To correct a little bit, I don't think they're either of them. Well, I don't think Ryan Hart, because he went on Twitter and corrected, and like the full podcast didn't seem like Ryan Hart was being negative about games being like a little bit on the easier side.
What did Ryan Hart correct?
He was like, I'm not trying to say that games are bad for this reason, or that they're like, because games are harder back in the day doesn't mean that, they're better than games of now. Like, he's just saying that the execution was more difficult. And then, but that one clip took off, and
that's still beating around. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting too much. But like, it still feels like it's beating around the bush, isn't it? Because like, and again, all respect and love to Ryan Hart, who's one of the best, like great. Literally, like if this is a sport, he's one of the goats. He's like the Dr. J or honestly, Will Chamberlain, like
winners and stuff like that on his belt. Yeah,
exactly. One of the Hall of Famers. But like, like the crux of the argument is, are players who are at the top level right now, are they really that good versus players at the top level back in the day? And this is like a debate that has been waged in every major vocation since fucking time immemorial, right? We talk a lot on this podcast about basketball. That is the basketball debate every 3 fucking years. Could Curry beat Jordan in his prime? What happened to the pick and roll? Would LeBron last against Jordan? And would he beat the Detroit Pick? Like all of these debates constantly happen. Do you really think Corday could beat Eminem in a rap battle? Do you think rappers today mumble like all of these things it's the same debate over and over and over again? And so I'm holding back because I'm gonna go in.
I know, I feel the bubbling.
I'm mad. Yeah. But the thing is that like, do you feel that from what you're saying that there is validity to what they're saying, that a lot of the skill and the effort that was exhibited back in the arcade days is like that took more work and effort to be good at the game than it does now? Do you feel like the skill base is higher? The
skill base itself
is higher than it was now? Because that's the implied thing. I don't think it feels like that's the implied conversation at large the community is having, not as whether it's intended by Ryan or Chris or not. That's kind of the conversation that has been engulfing the community, honestly, since Street Fighter 4.
Yes, I think Street Fighter 4 is also like the sort of like apex of that mountain, as we start to see that a lot of games past Street Fighter 4 are considered to be like more on the modern side of things, when a lot of people are talking about newer fighting games in general. But overall, I want to say that these are like completely different games in completely different times. There's a lot of like nuance to the discussion, because realistically, if you want to nip it in the bud, you could just go, well, they're different games. They're going to require different skill sets. Even if it's Street Fighter, going from Street Fighter 3 to Street Fighter 4, you can carry some things over. You can always carry things over, but it's going to require a different skill set from you to thrive in that new meta, thrive in that new like sort of like strong character list and stuff like that. What do you think, Zaid? I'm curious to hear.
Oh, I'm fucking mad. Yeah. Like first off, like I understand your point, but that being said, do you think your life is easier because your parents had to walk 3 miles in the snow every day to get to work, right? Like, I think in some aspects, like this is just a debate that's happened so many fucking times, and I'm just like over it at this point.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot.
I don't want to be. Listen, I am nowhere near like if we're being very honest, right? Like Cola has more knowledge about the game than either of us because he's a commentator and he lives and breathes this stuff, right? But as somebody who has gone through multiple generations of Street Fighter, as somebody who is an expert at multiple vocations, right? Like video, like filmmaking, video, music, right? And like those are like competitive vocations that you have. Like I am at the like level, not to say that I'm better than it, but like I've been at the top player level for other shit that's not Street Fighter, right? Like this is the same fucking debate. And when you get to a certain level in these mature vocations, at a certain point, that debate's just really fucking stupid because you realize that it doesn't matter. Like it's just you. Like that's what lasts. Whatever is new. Like the best example I can give you is mumble rap, right? And people will say music is subjective. Fuck all that. There is an objective side of music in terms of like plays you are making as an artist and the way you are reacting to the trend and popular music. Like popular music is there is some luck involved. Like there's luck involved in a tournament draw and shit like that. But like, hear what I'm saying. In terms of skill standing out and the projects you're doing and everything like that, in that vocation and rap and in music, like new shit comes along that they do something that is they reduce the effort from one aspect of the process, whether it's auto-tune, whether it's mumble rap, whether it's something else. And that becomes incredibly easy. So all the effort you've been putting into this one aspect of your craft is just erased. Right? And this thing is doing better than anything that came before it. But then when you actually try to jump into that, there is a whole new dimension of skills and things that you need to actually succeed in that vocation that you don't have. Right? And again, I'll give you the example of mumble rap. Mumble rap has this whole like ridiculous, like it's very hard to understand what they're saying. The lyrics are simplified. You know, the beats are a little bit more like candy as opposed to like hardcore 808s and stuff. Like it's a very different kind of thing from the low sculpted end of like music before it, right? Like hip hop music before it. There are less bars and stuff like that. But when you look into it, the main difference is the drawl and the delivery people are giving. And there is a thing about that drawl and that delivery where it is understandable to the audience after you listen to it a few times, and the style and the vocation and the substance of it works better in certain areas of where people are living their everyday lives of to just throw on in the background and passively and actively listen to it in two different scenarios. Like that is a huge like chess move play to make in pop music when you shift to that style, right? And there are people who took that style, melded it with actual bars, who were older MCs and still kept what they wanted to, kept the skill base and elevated the craft. And everybody who bitched about it fucking aren't around anymore. So like I get really fucking annoyed at it because like I left when I first left the fucking FGC for a minute to go to Berkeley and do music and shit like that. The first thing I was fucking told by a teacher when I was being like, because at the time Drake was coming up and I was like, oh man, Drake isn't real rap and Lil Wayne isn't real rap and this isn't real rap, blah, 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 blah. And this isn't skill based. I missed the old skill base of like Kweli and Eminem and battlers. And he was just like, okay, that's great. Shut the fuck up and learn it because you're competing against them. It doesn't fucking matter if you're this isn't a game. This is you want to do this for a living. This is what you don't have to give up who you are, but know what you're fighting against or you lose. And that's why you see a lot like now music is a search bar and anybody can fuck with it. And I swear to you, it's the same as Street Fighter because listen, like I'm been going on for a second, but like it's just so fucking stupid to me that we're like going on about like, oh man, like was this the skill base is different. The arena is different.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask both of you a question, actually. I like where this is going. I do want to and I feel like this relates to specifically like the competitiveness and at the top level of like these older players being like, this is whack. And, realizing that you're just going to completely need a new skill set for this game. I think that like that conversation is like overdone, like you said, constantly just like at this point, it's either adapt or go back to the game. Or go back to the game that you enjoy and love, right? You obviously don't have to force yourself to do these things if you don't want to.
Right.
But there's also another sort of conversation to be had when it comes to, and we mentioned it before, when it comes to accessibility versus skill. And a lot of the times when we mention the old days, arcade days and stuff like that, we're talking about lack of accessibility versus sort of like the ease of sort of the game itself. Do you think that a lot of players kind of get mixed up in that and think just because, let's say, a game like Street Fighter 6 or Tekken 8 is more accessible, that makes it sort of less of like a competitive game?
Yes, it's the stupidest. Like that's like like I'm not kidding you when I say like this is like a fallacy in every. How are we industry. The only fucking vote? Like it's a fallacy in every single vocation. Even if I'm not experiencing, you go to a top level in any fucking thing on earth, any competitive thing, and that is the number one fallacy you can fall into, where people who are at that level roll their fucking eyes. Mm-hmm. Everybody was making fun of Shaq 4 or 5 years ago when he was like, well, why don't everybody just do the pick and roll? Like, if you know, in basketball, pick and roll, where a guy screens someone else and someone goes behind him and shoots. That's called the pick and roll. It's a common tactic in basketball. Like he was like, why don't people just do this? And fucking like the commentators there were like, because everybody can shoot threes now, Shaq. Steph Curry's making it from the logo. Like, what the fuck? Like, of course, you have to guard them completely differently. Like, the game has changed fundamentally. It's like, people, you can't beat the shit out of people like the Detroit Pistons did by like throwing their elbows and elbowing Michael Jordan in the face all the time. All right, like the world, like it's a common thing. So if you're saying like, well, back in the day, NBA players used to beat the shit out of each other, so now they don't, so it's more accessible. I mean, I guess. But like now everybody has to learn how to shoot 3-pointers. And if you've watched a game of basketball in like the last 3 months, you know that a lot of people can't fucking shoot threes, even though they try. And that's a huge reason a lot of people lose fucking game. Like, it's hard because you have to have that in your skill set. And again, the game has changed. You're like the way people parry, the way people play footsies, the way invincible moves work, right? The way meter management.
That's the newest big one. Meter and management of like resources is like a big common thing I've seen with a lot of modern fighting games nowadays.
If we're talking about just like, let's say just career, like if you want to be the best dentist, right? Like you want to be like, I'm the best dentist in America. Like, at a certain point, like if you're like in the top tier of dentists, all of the best dentists know the same shit and tricks and everything like that of the trade. They all have more experience than everybody else. Skill is like this much of the equation. 95% of it is experience, because you know that at a top level, you are studying every day. You are looking at dental videos and how to be the best dental strategies,
in the
right? You know all of the dental matchups really well, like cavity I use, like you know that inside and out, and that's common knowledge. Skill is like the minute to minute decision making at the end of that like rainbow. So learning the game, it's easier, but competing at the game has I don't understand the idea of making the game difficult to fucking learn, because then less people play it. And I know that because Counter-Strike 2 is great, but the player base has not expanded to an insane degree comparatively to what it was back in the day, right? Like it's not only because of more options, like games like Fortnite blow up, games that are easy to access blow up, like even Elden Ring blew up, because it was the easiest like Souls-like game to access. People like, oh well, Bloodborne is a true Souls game. Gatekeeping. Shut the fuck up. Like it's not about that.
But I get what you're trying to say though. I get what in terms of like you sure. The games don't like games can still have depth but they don't need to be difficult. I feel like
Exactly.
there's a disconnect between the two. It doesn't have to be hard as hell to get into off the rip.
Right.
Make it easy to learn, but hard to master. And I think that's one thing that developers need to get better about. I think we're actually getting better about that in the first place. Street Fighter 6, it's a harder game than what most people think because it's easy to get into, easy to drive rush, stand fierce, all that, OD, fireball stuff. But at high level, it is very hard to meter manage, to calculate when you're actually going to kill. If you drive impact somebody and they're blocking and they hit the wall, shit, you got to readjust a little bit depending on your conversion, stuff like that. Perfect knuckle combos. Everybody hates Luke smashing, crouching, medium punching up. Perfect. But I'll tell you one thing, you drop that shit on $1 million stage, you'd be looking mad different. That execution is not hard, but in the absolute moment and keeping solid and making sure you have enough bar and making sure that you don't burn out before the rest of the shit, before it snowballs and you die. That's a skill that many people have not been able to grasp. That's still depth. And I want more games to have that where it's a depth at the very end and not, be hard to learn. Like that's the utopia that we're looking for. But back to the whole player base sort of thing, it's wild that people say that, and I'm not saying, because Reinhardt and Christie didn't say that. In fact, I believe Reinhardt actually said the opposite. He thinks that players of these days of this caliber are warriors no matter what time place you place them in, right? And we've seen that.
Okay, I should probably, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to clarify, like, I'm not necessarily throwing that shade at Chris and Ryan. I'm throwing that at the conversation itself. Like the conversation pisses me off. Yeah. I think like I've given Chris and Ryan their flowers. I think they have really, really interesting perspective, and Vi has kind of a similar perspective from what I've heard. Right. But I'm not dissing them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Correct.
Although I would win a rap battle, but like I'm not dissing them. I wouldn't apologize like J. Cole at the end.
Oh yeah. We ain't doing that. We ain't doing that
here.
But I will say, if you look at the Jazzy circuit, there are a lot of players from Third Strike that have gotten in 6 to 7 years ago instead of just waiting 20 to 30 years. There's a lot of young players in Marvel 3. Like there are still young cats playing these older games and making waves. Hell, Smug. Every time I see him boot up his stream nowadays, it's Third Strike or an older game. Bro, he is still cooking in old CVS 2. Like, so if you put these players that are good now or younger in older times or whatever, they have the mentality of a competitor and they will still, it'll still be the exact same thing. Will they do it now? It's a lot harder because they're focused on newer games. It's harder to access the older games and they don't have tours the same sort of way. So if they want to be competitive, it's a lot harder, and spreading your focus is difficult in the first place. But someone asked Big Bird, could you enter Third Strike at Evo? Yeah, he probably could and do well, but his focus is elsewhere and it's with a different game. If he was in that time period and he was focused on that game, he could do good. He was already good in 4, by the way. If people didn't know, his guy was insane in 4. But it goes down to the fact that if you're a good competitor for any time period, you're going to have a good mindset. You understand how to lab, how to game plan. Even if the access to the tools are a lot less, you are still a competitor. You are still a champion. And you're gonna, because
competitors also scan the environment.
Exactly.
They don't just like fucking, I'm just gonna play the game the way I want to play it. But like they scan the environment and they make adjustments to the way they approach a game from the environment. And also, you mentioned Marvel 3. How many motherfuckers bitched about Marvel 3? I was on a train with Yipes and Persia, and when Marvel 3 was like I think it was right before before Ultimate Marvel 3, right? Like before Ultimate Marvel 3 had even come out. I was on a fucking train in New York with Persian and Yipes. And I was asking him, hey man, what do you think of Marvel 3? And his exact response was at the time, he was like, I think it's great. I think it's all love. At the same time, I'm really upset that there's no player expression because of people like Dante. Everybody plays Dante the same way. Everybody plays this character the same way. And they were in agreement. And now it's changed because the game has had time to develop, right? It has had a lot of time to develop and birth, but there's a lot of motherfuckers. I'm not talking shit on Persia or Yipes. I love them both. But there are a lot of motherfuckers who are not Persia, who are not Yipes, who barely played Marvel 2, who saw Marvel 2 things and like Marvel 2. They're like fans of Marvel 2 and they're like, oh man. And they would shit on Marvel 3, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, Marvel 3 is the best game to ever happen. Everybody bitched about that game. Everyone bitched about Zero May Cry. No, but everyone that people were going nuts that there was an Iron Fist this year because it was the game is changing. Third Strike, fucking Ryu is somewhat viable now. Do you understand how insane that is?
The dingy.
Like, I've described Chun-Li in Third Strike as white privilege. I'm correct. Okay? All right? If you play Chun-Li, you are in the top 1% of the 1% when you're playing that game. Right? Because I can make every decision correct, and you can make 2 decisions, and you are on top of the economy. Okay? Like, that's how fucking hard it is to play that game with that character. And now things have changed. People play Yang now.
Go forward, super.
Yeah.
You play Oro now. There's like an unblockable with Oro that I was like, 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
There was like a DJ tactic in Super Turbo that came out like 4 or 5 years ago that made him the best character in the game for a period of time. Like, I remember Seth Killian talking about it. Maybe not 4 or 5 years ago, but like, it was 2016. Ooh. Like it was like there was a tactic that came out around the time Street Fighter 5. Somebody figured out something with DJ, and it was like, this makes him like the best character in the game, like for ST. And I don't know where it is now, but like that shit happens all the time because the meta, the way people approach a game changes. Right? It's different. People figure out different things, and tactics don't get less strong. It just becomes different to respond to the environment.
It really takes a dedicated community to really lab that stuff out, to really figure that stuff out. You think that Iron Fist would have been in the Evo top 8 in like year 2 of UMVC 3? That's not happening. That takes time to develop, regardless, right? So like I
Justin dropped him.
Yeah,
Justin played him for a little bit and then dropped him. Yeah, because it was just like I can't do that. You know.
Look, I'm 1000% on the same page as you guys when it comes to this stuff. Like, it's very tired. Guys, you need to realize that this stuff just takes time. If you don't like a meta, you don't like a meta. That's totally chill. Right. However, if you're going to, say that this game is less complex, give it 3 years and then come back to me and say the same thing to my face. I highly doubt you're going to be able to say that.
It's just so insufferable, dude. Because I loved Street Fighter 4, and then watching everybody I played Third Strike and Street Fighter 4, watching everybody from Third Strike bitch about Street Fighter 4 for fucking years, man.
Baby's first game. Years. I remember that meme. Baby's first game,
and
bro.
then right afterwards, they're like, all like, man, do you remember Street Fighter 4? That was the best. Like, what happened to like us bitching about like one frame links, like unblockables, like what happened to everybody being mad about Vortex, or like you have no positioning on Wake Up because everybody could just invincible through shit. Like, what happened to all of that discussion? I talked to Watson once. I've talked to Watson multiple, but like I talked to Watson and he was like, I was like, did you guys ever feel this way? And he was like, fuck yes, we felt this way. We thought Super Turbo was trash because fucking like it has a super meter. So Capcom, like when Super Turbo, which is arguably considered the best fighting game of all time by most people, everybody who played hyper fighting at a high level fucking hated it because like it was considered like, okay, so basically you have this instant thing that can level a match, right? And that's there for flashy combos that Capcom put in to attract new players. It's not for people with skill where you have to actually grind out the match and win. You don't have to be clutch anymore. You just have to get the super, right? And it shuts down fireballs if you're playing with certain characters. It does it makes matchups like there was so much complaining. There was complaining about Marvel. There was complaining about Marvel 2. There was complaining about Third Strike. James Chen still bitches about Third Strike, bro. Like, he still doesn't, well, to my knowledge, like he's talked to me like, oh, I think the parry system ruins the game because, every character can parry and it makes something, but all of those people eventually get over it. I eventually get over things that I'm upset about with the games because life is fucking short and you don't have time to bitch about. I'm sorry I'm going on so many tirades though, but I'm just so annoyed at it, dude.
Get it out, man.
Yeah.
It really just genuinely upsets me, man.
For sure.
Like, cause it's like, it's that principle fucks music so badly. And music is such a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. It is a death knell to all music. It was why rap music was considered terrible when it was discovered. Like when people started rap, people were like, oh, this is how you do music. You have to do it like this, and you have to do it like this. And there's no skill involved in rap music. And for 20 fucking years, everybody fought that bullshit. And then like now rap music is this established thing. Right. And now people are like, oh, you can't do rap like this. You have to do rap like that. Like, where the fuck do you not remember like the 30 or so fucking years? Like rockers, like, do the rock musicians not remember the 30 or so fucking years where people were like, oh, this isn't real music? You know, what happened to this, to folk and country? Like, get the fuck out of here.
And the new stuff
like, I'm
isn't
so
going
fucking
to
tired of that
erase the
shit.
old stuff either.
No.
It's like you're going to have
still there.
Your favorite music still. It's there. Like, you don't have to engage
that's
in
like
this part.
That's the point of competition, is doing shit that breaks a rule and making it work. That's like the fucking point of like learn. Like you're just gonna do
Evolution.
the same shit every single year and see like, well, I guess I hope it works out. People are consistently trying to figure out new tech to get an ed. That's how it works. If you're not there, get the fuck out.
That's how it should be. We need to have new games, new experiences. We can't have the same games and same shit every single goddamn year. I don't want to re-release a 5. I love 5, especially at the very end. That's one of my favorite games. But I don't want to re-release of that game. I want something new and fresh. I'm glad that we are, having something new. And again, with the players, as stated, if you put them in any era, you give them the time to shine and grind out, they are going to cook, no matter what. That's just the way they are bred, the way they are made.
I kind of wanted to mention sort of like the trend of like aggressiveness that new games are trending towards, because I heard that's also a debate that a lot of people are like, fighting games aren't like defensive anymore.
Isn't that what people wanted though? Like,
See,
isn't that like
that goes
like
back to the whole, we can't have the same shit, because that's what it was before. Really defensive games, and then people wanted more offensive games.
Everybody bitched about that shit so long. Like I'm so like again. Like Street Fighter 4, everyone's like, oh, well, when you get the you can just turtle, you can timer scam,
yeah.
Like the fuck.
So
like,
people are pointing at like I'll use Street Fighter as an example because we're a Street Fighter podcast at this point. No, I'm joking.
We are Street Fighter. Yeah.
That like Drive Rush is particularly like sort of like funnels the game into a particular direction, and if you don't like that direction, then you're not going to like Street Fighter 6 and stuff like that. And it's sort of like this aggressive gameplay. I'm in your face, I'm mixing you up and all that stuff. And people are starting to realize that doesn't let other play styles to breathe and have room. I'm not saying this, by the way. People are saying this
Vortex
online and stuff like that. But
Vortex
didn't let you play at all, bro. You wasn't playing at all. You didn't have no play style to Vortex.
Uppercut the Kuma dive kick. Get the fuck out of here, dude.
Listen, when Makoto grabs you, when she goes like this.
Yeah. Bro, you want to tell me about not getting to play Makoto in Third Strike? Have you seen that Makoto clip where she just double perfects somebody and the guy's like, I can't,
Sometimes it'd be
put
like
the controller
that.
down. Just watch the match, because like
just put it down, bro.
I'll play devil's advocate and say that maybe people's particular playstyles are not being exemplified in some of these games because they are shifting to a more aggressive meta, and maybe like the zoning and certain other playstyles are maybe not as exemplified. I think there's different types of zoning. I think there's different types of aggression and defense. I think there's things you could break down, but their type of zoning and their type of defense is not in these games. However, if you look at how games progress years after years, like they usually start with either being overly defensive or overly offensive or whatever, and then they skim it down. Street Fighter 5 is a great example. You see a variety of play styles and things like that as the game got better and better at skimming things out. Tekken is like that right now, where it's very aggressive. There's a lot of plus frames, a lot of quote unquote forced interactions, but at the same time, you will see them change this as the games go on. The developers know, and this is how things start. And so if you don't like the game right now, if it's not your play style right now, come back in a few months, a few patches. I guarantee you things will shift unless you have a really weird odd play style, like some really weird fetish that nobody else has got. Like, if that's just you just a freak and you just out of luck. But
listen, if you want to super jump and stay above the screen and go, for like 30 minutes, do your thing. But you're not seeing that in any modern fighting game. I'm sorry.
But also that's the meta too, though. Like if you think about it, like if these guys playing, that's gonna change. Like, listen, if I think I forgot my point.
I mean, okay. Is it that everyone always labs out offense and defense is like the last thing to lab out or last thing to get used to for a lot of players? I do feel like that's the case for Street Fighter.
but it's also because like player expression is like that because of the competitive meta, right? Like everybody prioritizes something in the meta, and look, there's a risk reward in Street Fighter 6, right? So you're either doing more damage or burning more drive meter, right? Or you're either burning drive meter in a different way or doing that. Like for example, like Ryu has like there are two. You have a risk reward with doing the Denjin Hashogeki or doing a drive rush combo, right? You could do more damage with one. You could do like there's a variety of different things, positioning that you gain or you lose depending on what you do. But everybody in the competitive scene this is their job. So at a certain point, you have to prioritize one thing over everything else because that is what everybody's prioritizing. And if you don't have that advantage, you're fucked. So that's what homogenizes a lot of this stuff, right? Again, if Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are shooting threes and your pick and roll is not working, at a certain point, you got to be like, all right, we got to get this guy to shoot a three. We can't be doing layups all the time. You can't have the big doing like, and then eventually over time, you figure out counter strategies. Now, yeah, everybody still shoots threes, but you have other strategies to kind of break that. But it took time. Players' styles are going to homogenize when everybody is betting their livelihoods on this stuff. Talking about music homogenizes because that. Everybody's going to do a mumble rap song because they're fucking, if they don't get to feed their kids. And then eventually they'll break out of it because they figure something else out. But you have to figure out the landscape a little bit before you get hit by that.
You have to play along for a little bit before you can sort of develop your own
You have to
style.
understand it.
Yeah.
You have to understand it. And some people understand it better by playing with it. And some people understand it by taking some time and learning it and then coming back and making a splash. You know? Justin and Daigo, every game I think have always imposed their identity on those games. Every time you see Justin play a game or Daigo play a game, you can recognize them in that game, right? Like even Mena,
1000%.
You can recognize Mena from 5 to 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I definitely know Mena's play style in this game, man. I definitely know Noah's. Like Noah, the Luke player, like he burns out more than any other Luke or any other player.
Noah the
like
Prodigy?
You can see that's how he play. Like I feel like there's still player expression, but maybe it's not always the expression that people want, or, maybe it's just a matter of the community not like talking about that expression as much. That's also another thing. Like how many times do we bring up, oh, Mena plays like this, or this person uses this button more, or what have you, in a continuous amount of conversation. Like it's usually like, oh, well, they just smashed crouching medium punch. And it's like, well, no, there's a reason. There's spacing. There's, obviously that button's insane, but like for Luke.
Yeah.
But like
sure.
there's a reason behind certain things and how people use them in the economy of buttons. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, that's why we focus on what we focus on for commentary, but we need more outside the FGC.
Yeah, like Tekken, for example, like Korean Tekken versus American Tekken is very different. Korean Tekken,
Pakistani Tekken,
very different. Pakistani Tekken also very different as well. So very interesting to see those styles clash. I hope we can highlight those a little bit more in the future.
But that's the exciting part. I wish that becomes a conversation again, because that's the exciting part of these games.
Yes,
and like I feel for people like ours. But that was one of the topics we were getting into. If you want to get into it right now, we were going to talk about the state of Tekken.
Yeah.
Because Tekken has had a shit ton of conversation in the last few weeks about whether it's doing well or not. People like Arslan Ash have come out and said, like, like Tekken, he wants to win Evo to show people that Tekken 8 is a bad game, right? And like, I'm as a fellow Pakistani, I am not that good at Tekken, but like, as somebody who like I feel for people who are who are doing this as a competitive vocation,
right?
And just don't, like, you have to stick with it. Like, it's making decisions you don't want it to make, and you have to now change the way you approach everything, and your livelihood and your day to day is now based on this thing that you did not want to change, but it has to. Just because, you now have to play the game. Like, other people aren't forced to play Tekken 7, right? Or aren't forced to play Tekken 8. But top players have to play Tekken 8 because there are not Tekken 7 tournaments that are going to keep them sponsored. There are not Tekken 6, Tekken Tag tournaments. Like, you have to play this game, and you have to like it, and you have to deal with it. And I understand that feeling, like, with everything. Like, I understand that. It's not fun. Also, The other thing about Tekken is Harada did this interview, I think with Game Rada, and he said a few things about the player base, saying that, Tekken 8 or Tekken eventually needs to switch to like a team-based multiplayer thing or something like that. He suggested that, but he said that most young people nowadays are the opposite. They rarely are eager to engage in one-on-one showdowns. Plus, because fighting games pit you by yourself against a single opponent, you have to accept all the responsibility if you lose. You can't blame anyone else. In team-based shooters, when players win, they can say they won because of their own contributions, but when they lose, it's because they got matched with a lousy team. And Harada also preceded this by saying, like, he literally did a back in our day, we had a competitive thing that helped build the Japanese industry. Like, very, very clearly. Like, I love Harada, but like, this is a very old style of thinking, and I fundamentally disagree with it. But yeah, what do you guys think about the state of Tekken 8? Like, do you feel like Arslan has a point? Or do you feel like it's the same conversation we were having before?
I think that there are a ton of things, rumors, as well as theories in a sense that go into this. I'm not going to get too deep into like the tinfoil hat rabbit hole today, but what I do want to highlight are a few things. First of all, the most recent patch. The most recent patch messed some things up. Just quite frankly, it did. If you play, can you recap
Can you recap this for people who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely.
What it fucked up.
So it basically ends like FiddyX explained this fantastic in a video. So shout out to FiddyX for this. But the way that Tekken tends to approach their sort of like nerfs and buffs is they tend to change system mechanics more than character specific moves or abilities or things like that. Mm-hmm. And as a result, for a grand example, nerfing sort of like Devil Jin and Leo, certain combos that can break the floor and floor break stages. Now they added a clause that grounded move. If you're in the grounded state, you can't be broken. Like the floor can't be broken. And that grounded state is a problem because it's incredibly ambiguous. And if you're slumped up on the sidewall, you're technically not grounded, but it looks exactly the same, like animation wise. So like for pro players, this isn't going to be an issue whatsoever because they are going to lab out those nuanced scenarios. But for someone playing the game, like you and I, someone that's, not at that level, they're going to get frustrated because they're going to be like, wait, I thought my combo broke the floor. I thought this interaction was supposed to go this way, and you're feeding me wrong information. Like this animation looks like the animation that should be, lead to this result. And if it doesn't, then what the heck, right? It just creates an accessibility problem as well as sort of just like an overall feel, like a game feel problem. Mm-hmm. And that's the number one sentiment that I've seen from a lot of people for this Tekken patch is that the game feels off. Which I agree with after playing with for a little bit of time and sort of labbing out those particular like scenarios and interactions and stuff like that. Overall, there are a few things that pros are just like disagree with, things that are frustrating when it comes to sidestepping, like throws and grabs are also like tracking on both sides for some reason, which, hey, as a King player, fantastic. But, but for someone else, that's going to suck, right?
Sorry. I just had a little vomit in my mouth after you said that. But, I don't mind pros. I know we spoke about, the top level players, stuff like that, talking on Twitter and stuff. I don't mind them airing out their grievances as long as they list out why they think what they think. Arslan Ash, he is very, very vocal about what he does not like about Tekken at all, like right now. Many of the pros are, and I think it's fine for them to talk about this at length, but I think there is a little bit of, and this isn't really to them, it's like the entire community, where you have to be careful about how much you say or how you say it really, because if it's overly negative, you have a big platform, and unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you're representative of the game and the community. So people outside, even inside the community, will ride that energy, that emotion with you. And half of them don't even understand what the fuck you might be saying in terms of, well, I think this should be plus or minus or whatever. They just see, oh, you don't like the game, and they take that verbatim. And that affects how they play. Unfortunately, we can sit here and say, yeah, just ignore them and ignore all the negativity and stuff like that. But it does weigh on a community when a top level player, someone you like to watch or even play against, or, you know, people in your community are like, yeah, this game sucks. Like, you have to kind of think about how you say stuff and how you structure it. And it's also better for the developers. If you're like, okay, I don't like these things, and this is the reason why in particular, and this is, I don't, and, you know, I'm not saying you can't just be like, I'm having a bad day, Tekken 8 sucks, whatever. You could, that's your own right to do that, but all the time sucks. Don't do that. But I'm saying be meticulous in how you come through with that information, because I want them to, like, the developers to be like, okay, they really don't like this, and let's take this and move this around, like the wall combo thing. You see that now they have a patch just recently, or they're going to at least release a patch soon, saying, oh, that was not the intended effect up in the wall, tornado stuff. Like, I'm sorry, like, let's fix that. We see that we have caused an issue with that, right? Like, showcasing why these are issues and talking about them is a better way to deal with this than, you know, game sucks all the time. You know, like, that shit don't change nothing.
Yeah.
So Arslan Ash, actually, they are getting better about that. And Arslan and a lot of other players have been doing a really good job of, like, you see the salty tweets and all that stuff like that. That's fine. But they do list out what they don't want in the game. I think it was Lohai or a different player saying, hey, we should change these things for the frame data to make the game less oppressive, and listing out exactly what he wanted. Like, give me that. Give me more of that. Like, even if I disagree, I want to see more of that, because that creates discussion instead of just dogpiling.
Yes. And it's hard because you're not a game designer. It's hard, but, like, you don't necessarily have to provide a solution to these, like, problems that you've, like, see in the game. More so just, like, reasonings as to why you want them to change. You know, it's a game designer's job to sort of approach those problems. But, you know, giving a reason is the first step to, like, really sort of addressing these things instead of complaining.
Do you guys think, though, that that's... Part of me is, like, wondering if that is going to be par for the course, though. You know, like, again, not to bring it back to the, like, oh, we're a sport, but this is kind of every sport. Like, it eventually gets to this point where everyone complains about everything. Everybody complains about the NFL. Everybody complains about the NBA. Everybody complains about hockey. They love hockey. They love the NBA. They love the MLB. They will go to every game, but they will complain, even though they love it. And what keeps those institutions going when the complaints are high? Because I feel like a lot of us have a spectator base and we have a player base, and it feels like Evo is a good example of that, right? Where the spectacle gets so big and it's so wide that everything is silenced, and we really enjoy and we celebrate this shit. But when you have, like, glaring issues like in Tekken 8 and stuff like that you're trying to get through, what's to stop people from focusing on that when you don't have enough spectacle around it? And I feel like if we get to a point, if Evo is, if fighting games are on this level where it is the future, and eventually we're playing them every game in a stadium or every game on a pit or something like that, like if they become these even more enormous events like than they are, and they're getting bigger and bigger, is that something that we have to accept, that players are going to be upset more often? Not because I think, like, saying like I agree with you, Cola, that people have to be responsible about the way they talk about things. And I do agree that there is an effort of response. Like, people will be salty, and then there will be an effort right afterwards to be a little bit more responsible. And you'll see, like, Sajam highlight that, like, well, Mena lost a fucking tournament match, that's why he posted this tweet, or Angry Bird lost this, that's why this was there.
Right.
You get my question, right? Like, is this something that we have to expect more often, especially the young man's game, especially it's because people who make a name in the scene all of a sudden and come out of nowhere are usually in their 19 or like 19, 20.
That's you know, it's hard.
Both of you did the same.
Yeah, we both did the list back of
the contemplative sigh.
It's hard because, like, I'd rather people be talking about the game than not, just in general. Because if you ain't talking about a game, it's not a good sign. But however, I think it's a matter of the bigger things get, the more voices come through, and we have more platforms for people to be loud. And it's obviously negativity thrives and spreads more. I think it just is going to be a part of, you know, as we get bigger, this is just a part of, you know, what we have to deal with, and we have to figure out how to deal with it in the right sort of way. And I think we're still fresh at doing so. It's only recently that we went to Twitter to start using it for our main platform, unfortunately, or X or whatever you want to call it. Bullshit. But
I don't think it's recent. It's been quite a few years at this point.
I would say like less than a decade. But compared to how much time we spent on Shoryuken, IRC
a decade
forums,
is long, Cola. We're old, but we're not that old.
Yeah, but we're old. But like thinking about Game FAQs and Game Winners and all those other forums, like the time that maybe it feels like I spent more time on there. I probably did. It's a little bit on the fresher side.
Is it bad that Lumi is younger than us, but tall enough that if we went to a tournament, it would look like he adopted us or was our grandfather?
Oh yeah, Lumi, you are taller than us. God damn.
What can I say, guys? Hey, look.
Yeah,
it's just how
Lumi has the ability that if we all went to a Target and like we saw something that we wanted, he could just put it on the shelf that we could never reach. Like that's how tall Lumi is.
I need to like harness that in some way. I need to like use that in tournaments to like instill some sort of like
fear.
I feel like I could be a good TO. I'm a pretty decent TO, but I feel like I could be a great TO if I'm just like, hey, like you can see me across the venue calling you for your match. I feel like you can't miss me. So
yeah, Lumi is like the second evolution of me. Like he's like because we both have a beard.
You're like the first one, or like you're the last?
I'm the first one. Yeah, I'm the initial Pokemon. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If I'm
the starter,
I'm
Charmeleon.
Yeah, I'm the starter.
Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm Charmeleon. You're Charizard.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So
hey, I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
But to answer your question about sort of like the complaints, yeah, that's these things are getting more populated. More people are enjoying these things. Therefore, there's going to be a bigger audience and a lot of grifters, a lot more grifters, a lot more also genuine concerns and complaints, right? So it's all about filtering that noise and sort of like sharing a bit of goodwill with the developers, the QA testers, and the people that really make the things that we love, and ensure that these people are, sort of fed information in a proper way, informed, sort of like, hey, this is why I dislike this. This is why I think this interaction should go this way instead of that way. And Bandai's been doing a fantastic job, like I mentioned before. They're finally including the reason as to why they're doing nerfs and buffs in their patch notes. They did not do that before. Or if they didn't, or if they did, it would be like a long time. Like they haven't done this in a long time. So the fact that they're even making those like slight changes, and the translations of the patch notes as well. They're using fighting game terms. They're using lingo like hurt boxes and hit boxes. And you can tell like the people that are translating this stuff, and there's love being put into this. So yeah, it's always about having goodwill with the people that are making the things that you are essentially consuming and trying to make into like big events and stuff like that. Right.
I agree. And I think to an extent, like there also has to be this idea that like, when something in a game isn't reacting the way you want it to react to, it's usually gonna be okay. Like the game will, like not everything is unfortunately like DBFZ where you have a patch that breaks the game indefinitely, right? Like like Third Strike had a lot of complaints about balance, but is still considered one of the best games like ever, right? All of these games have these issues, but like persist because of the feeling and the love that you have for them. So yeah, I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that young, like, because it just seems like it's happening more often, and it seems something that we have to pay attention to because these games are only getting more popular, and the more popular they get and the more visibility they have, the more scrutiny they get, because nobody likes to lose, and nobody likes to, I mean, to an extent, nobody likes to blame themselves for a loss. It's very hard.
That's the one point that Harada kind of got right. I'm going to be honest. That one point
that is a point. That is a point. I don't want to play I don't want to play Call of Tekken. Okay.
Really don't.
Like, I'm not.
No. League of Tekken. I don't want to play like
League of Tekken. Tekken Battle Royale.
And have this guy completely ruin my experience because he's just like
Valo Tekken.
Yeah.
Apex Tekkens.
Apex Tekken. No loot boxes.
Apex Tekken. I feel that's something that we all have to. We have to do a Let 'em Cook Helldivers session. That would be amazing. I feel like
I kind of want to get into that game. I've seen the light.
Have you not played it?
I have not. I actually have. Bro, I just got done with Dragon's Dogma.
That's fair.
And I'm moving over to Rise of Ronin. And once I get done with that, eventually I'll do some multiplayer.
Do you know that you're just like, I just want to clarify. Yeah. Like, we're like, hey, Cola, do you want to go see a movie? And you're like, listen, I have to read the entirety of the Lord of the Rings trilogy first.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
like I have to, and then you fail. I was like, listen, I just finished the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's also his Dark Materials. And, I want to restart Harry Potter again. I heard about the transphobia, but you know what? I'm going to give it a chance.
That is not me. I definitely will burn those suckers.
That's what you said. That's exactly what Cola said.
I would never listen.
Please
I would
send
never read
complaints.
Hold on. I would never even read one of those books. They got a black dude named Shackledom or something like that. I forgot. It's like something with like Shackledom or something. It's a hella racist name, and it's like implying that he breaking his shackles or something like that. I would never touch that with a 10-foot pole. I would never. Yeah.
J.K. Rowling's like, oh, this is the Indian cow, curry powderia. So,
oh my God.
That
Blackest
sounds like
Night
a
is for the black
I'm
one.
I'm tikka masala of the Indian sorcerers or some shit like that.
She'd be like, damn, this one, I really hit it with this one.
This is a banger.
I cooked.
Yeah.
I cooked.
I was in my bag for this one.
I can't cook tikka masala, but I can cook racism.
Very well. She said, well done. She got that one well done.
And then everybody's going to go to Daniel Radcliffe and he's be like, listen, I did that a long time ago.
Hey, man, it's not me. I've already been in like 20 movies since. Like, that's not.
Yeah. You seen Swiss Army Man? See Swiss Army Man.
Yeah.
Please leave me alone.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good discussion. I think it's really important. I'd like everybody to send their complaints to saintcola@gmail.com. Or whatever you want to list your email, Cola, so everybody could just send you emails if they're upset?
Tabani@gmail.com is mine if you want
That's
to go ahead
fucking a lie.
Send
that
them
email
over
is not real.
And make sure
doesn't
that
exist.
you put it all in caps. Yeah, so you can read it.
Anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. You can like and subscribe. We have you can go watch some more videos on the Zaid Tabani channel. Go check out Cola. Do you have anything coming up?
I'll be at Level Up in 2 weeks, and then this week it'll be Roundhouse Tag. You can find out on the TNS channels, all that good stuff. So, or just follow my socials. You'll see what I'm posting there.
Lumi, anything you want?
Yeah, feel free to follow me at Maze Lumi on Twitter. Also, just go to your locals. That's all I have to say.
Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Zaid Tabani.
I'm Say Cola.
And I'm Lumi.
And we'll catch y'all next week.